April 12, 1981. The day dawned with the promise of spring in Keddie, California. Keddie was a tight-knit mountain community, nestled amongst the pines, where the doors were often unlocked and neighbors looked out for one another. It was a place where children played freely, and a sense of security permeated the very air. But within the walls of Cabin 28, that idyllic sense of security was about to be shattered, replaced by a horror that would forever stain the town's collective memory. 14-year-old Sheila Sharp was returning home after a weekend away. She anticipated the familiar comforts of a Sunday afternoon, the warmth of family, but instead, she was about to walk into a scene ripped from the darkest nightmares. Inside, she discovered the lifeless body of her mother, Glenna Sue Sharp, a woman known for her kindness and devotion to her children. Her brother John, a teenager on the cusp of adulthood, lay nearby. And with them was Dana Wingate, a friend who had often spent time at the Sharps' cabin. All were dead. The victims had been bound with tape and electrical wire, subjected to a brutal and merciless attack, stabbed repeatedly, and bludgeoned with unimaginable force. It was a scene of unspeakable horror, a tableau of shocking violence that defied comprehension. Blood splattered the walls, soaked into the carpets, and stained the furniture, painting a gruesome picture of the carnage that had unfolded. The brutality of the crime spoke volumes, leaving no doubt about the killer's rage and intent. But amidst the carnage, there was another, even more chilling discovery. Sheila's 12-year-old sister Tina was missing. She had vanished without a trace, leaving behind only unanswered questions and a growing sense of dread. In a nearby bedroom, Sheila's younger brothers, Greg and Rick, along with their friend Justin Smartt, were found sleeping soundly, seemingly oblivious to the carnage that had occurred just feet away. They claimed to have slept through the entire ordeal, a claim that would later be met with skepticism and intense scrutiny. How could such a brutal and violent crime occur within the confines of a small cabin without waking anyone? The layout of the cabin, the proximity of the rooms, all defied explanation. The questions began immediately, swirling around the investigators like a dense fog, and the answers, frustratingly, would prove elusive, obscured by conflicting accounts and a lack of concrete evidence. The Keddie Cabin 28 murders would quickly become one of America's most haunting and perplexing unsolved mysteries, a chilling reminder of the darkness that can lurk even in the most seemingly peaceful places. The day before, the Sharps' lives seemed ordinary. Sue and her children spent the afternoon with neighbors. John and Dana later hitchhiked to Quincy, returning late. Sheila left to sleep at a friend's cabin, a decision that saved her life. Sometime that night, violence erupted in Cabin 28. The attack was frenzied, using knives, a hammer, and bindings, suggesting both planning and rage. Investigators struggled to piece together the timeline. The motive was a mystery. Neighbors heard nothing, and the boys in the next room slept undisturbed. Was it a robbery, revenge, or something more personal? The silence of that night only deepened the mystery. The Keddie murders defied explanation from the very start. Behind the sensational headlines and grim crime scene photos were real people, each with their own story and dreams. They weren't just names, they were individuals interwoven with family and the small community of Keddie. Sue Sharp, a single mother, was at the heart of this family. She had bravely moved her family to Keddie, seeking a fresh start. John Sharp, just 15, was a protective brother. Dana Wingate, 17, was simply a friend who happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. Their lives were full of promise and potential, but that promise was brutally cut short, leaving behind pain and unanswered questions. The disappearance of young Tina Sharp haunted the community for years. 3 years later, her remains were found 50 miles away. The discovery extinguished any remaining hope, turning searching into heartbreak. The surviving members of the Sharp family were left to grapple with trauma and unanswered questions. The brutal crime shattered the very foundation of an entire family. It left behind deep, emotional scars that would never fully heal. The Keddie murders were a devastating tragedy that irrevocably destroyed futures. The investigation was flawed from the outset. The crime scene was contaminated as neighbors and onlookers wandered through the cabin. Evidence was mishandled or overlooked. Key items like a bloody knife and hammer were downplayed. Forensics were limited, and crucial early hours were lost. Interviews with the surviving boys were inconsistent, and leads quickly went cold. Years passed, evidence was lost, and the case faded into obscurity. Decades later, a new sheriff reopened the case, discovering a taped confession that had been ignored for years. The mishandled investigation left justice just out of reach. As the investigation unfolded, two names surfaced repeatedly: Martin Smartt and John Boubede. Marty, a neighbor, had a history of violence. Bo was a drifter with a criminal record. Marty allegedly resented Sue Sharp, believing she influenced his wife to leave him. Bo stayed with Marty and vanished after the murders, raising suspicions. Marty's wife testified, believing both men were responsible. A letter from Marty surfaced, hinting at his guilt. The letter contained the chilling words, "I've paid the price for your love, with 4 people's lives." Despite the evidence, no charges were filed against Marty or Bo, and both died before facing trial. The failure to act on these leads contributed to the case remaining unsolved. The Keddie murders shattered the town's innocence. Fear replaced trust. Neighbors eyed each other with suspicion. The crime scene, Cabin 28, became a grim landmark until its demolition in 2004. For the victims' families, the lack of answers meant endless pain and no closure. The story became legend, drawing true crime enthusiasts and amateur sleuths. The murders left a permanent scar on Keddie, a ghost story that refused to fade. The victims are remembered, but the questions remain. The legacy of the Keddie murders is one of grief, fear, and unresolved horror. More than 40 years later, a chilling passage of time, the Keddie murders still remain tragically unsolved. Suspects and investigators have since died, and crucial evidence has faded with the years. But the haunting mystery endures on. Modern forensics brought a glimmer of hope, but ultimately no definitive answers. Theories strongly point to Martin Smartt and Boubede, but without solid convictions, it remains just speculation. The case is a stark and grim reminder of the lasting impact of violence and the profound failures of our justice system. The victims' unheard voices still echo in the mountains, desperately demanding answers. Until the complete truth is finally found, the Keddie Cabin murders will forever haunt the American imagination.